All right, hey everyone. Um, Sorry for the delay here. I'm just getting started. Got my screen shared. All right. So, my name is Robert Osborne, and I'm a computer systems and security analyst. I want to thank BHack for having me and giving me the opportunity to present today. And I'd also like to thank Alexander for that last presenter. That looked like an awesome presentation. I hope you'll excuse me. I'm a little tired. I needed to get up a little earlier than expected today, but I am good to go here. Um, the goal of my presentation is to demonstrate some ways of using PowerShell to carry out tasks despite possibly enabled protections. PowerShell today is widely used by attackers, and it provides easy access to all major functions of the Windows operating system. This makes it important to know and to have an understanding of how it interacts in different situations. So to do this, I've set up a mini environment consisting of a domain controller, basic desktop, which is a member of the domain, and a certificate authority. In my test environment here, I was caught a little off guard. There's apparently another setting or permission I missed to demonstrate what I was looking to show. However, I can still show what's going on there. I had taken a couple screenshots from an environment that I work in to show some of these conditions. We'll get back there in a sec. So on the domain controller, in our group policy settings, what we are doing here is we want to prevent communication with the SAM database over RPC, or over the RPC protocol. And to do this, we enable the allow anonymous SID name translation. We want to disable that, which is disabled by default. We want to prevent anonymous enumeration of SAM accounts. We also want to prevent anonymous enumeration of shares, and we want to restrict anonymous access to named pipes and shares. And what this does is when we issue the net user command /domain, that uses the SAM RPC protocol to enumerate users and groups in an environment. So, wrong one. In my live environment, this is where I had to show this. You issue the command net user /domain, you get a system error 5 has occurred, access is denied. Same thing with net group. Now, although the SAM RPC permissions are restrictive, we are still able to make Ldap queries to return the same information. So to do this, we can build a PowerShell object simply. So we're going to replace net user /domain with a custom object. Name directory services directory searcher, which is an object used to query Ldap searcher. We want to set our object class to user, and we also want to invoke the findAll method. And basically, it's a way of returning information through Ldap instead of SAM RPC. We can do the same thing by replacing user with group, and that returns a few more objects than what the SAM RPC recalls, as it's pulling computer groups as well as user groups. Now, of course, there's different ways to query Ldap. What should we call it here? Sorry, I lost my place. So we are able to obtain more information than just users and groups. So in order to query more detailed instance or more detailed OUs, we need to know the LDAP syntax descriptors, which can be pretty long and hard to memorize. For example, the Ldap filter for, here we go. This value here is representing security groups in Active Directory. So to simplify that for myself, I had created a commandlet called get Ldap Info that uses switch parameters to return this information rather than having to know this. And this here is the base or the bone structure of what that kind of query looks like. So we are still creating our directory searcher object here, and we'll execute all this just to create our object. Then we're going to build information based off the current domain. So we're going to return the primary domain controller, the distinguished name of the domain, which is the DC or DC equals domain kind of thing. So, which is DC equals Osborne Pro, comma DC equals com. We perform our search on the defined LDAP filter. And, I messed that one up there. And all right, now we can return our results. Now this query, we're able to make this query without any credentials because of the way LDAP permissions are set up by default. So with LDAP version 3 authentication, there's two different types. There is simple and SASL. The simple authentication can be used with anonymous authentication or unauthenticated or a name password. So the anonymous authentication there is what grants us the anonymous ability to communicate with LDAP without sending credentials. The unauthenticated authentication is more for logging purposes and does not grant access to a client, and name password grants access to the server. However, this is not done in a secure manner as the creds or credentials are in clear text. The SASL authentication binds LDAP to another authentication mechanism like Kerberos. And also the SAM RPC protocol that we were using earlier is querying the SAM database, which is a file that's located on all Windows computers in C Windows System 32 config SAM, and it gets mounted in the registry at the HKey local machine SAM location. Another thing that's a little proprietary is the who am I command is a trigger for certain antivirus providers that something malicious may be going on. So if I'm trying to stay quiet in an environment, I usually try to avoid the who am I command by building or by using the Kerberos tokens. So to do this, this might be easier if I, one of these. So we can view our security token by building the object. All Windows Vanity. So this is the way to view our Kerberos token. And you can see there's different SID values instead of actual names for, say, the group memberships that we are members of. So one thing we can do here to enumerate rather than using the command whoami/group, we can enumerate a different way here by pulling the groups and their value, right? Put that into a variable because we're going to want to convert those to usernames. For the sake of time, I created a commandlet for this called convert SID, and all it does is convert SID values into usernames or usernames into SID values. And again, this is our way of supplementing the whoami command to help try to avoid possible detection. One last thing in this enumeration area, I discovered on, I believe, the Monteverde Hack the Box machine, was that if the permissions to SIM objects are limited, that the user with those limited positions is unable to read firewall rules. So if I were to issue a command for netsh using command prompt, or just simply get net firewall rule, the commands would be denied. There was a way to view those rules anyway by building an hnet config fw policy 2 com object, and this I wanted to show as it enumerates the firewall much faster than the other three, or than the other two. So using netsh to view firewall rules, it takes, here 907 milliseconds. Get net firewall rule takes 1,919 milliseconds, and then with our object that does not require SIM permissions, we have our fastest one with 410 milliseconds. I wanted to put that one out there. Another thing an administrator may do to add protection to an environment is to disable the caching of passwords on a machine. This is not always the case, as a laptop needs to connect to a VPN. If they're going to sign in with their Active Directory credentials, they need to be connected in order to authenticate first. However, if the protection is there, we can check for browser passwords that are cached. One way to do this is through the Windows Password Vault, and Internet Explorer uses the Password Vault to save credentials. To view the contents of it, we can build the Password Vault object and then retrieve the passwords from that vault. So executing it right now, we can see I have stored credentials here for the Tobor account. And also to show in Internet Explorer, we're going to sign into a dummy Bitwarden account here. And this is also not a reflection of anything negative against Bitwarden. This is just how the operating system works. So as soon as I save this password in Internet Explorer, I will be able to then run this command again and view the password that was saved there. Now a savvy administrator may use the password vault for storing passwords inside PowerShell scripts where they don't want to save the password in clear text inside the file. So just to demonstrate how that is done, we can load the password vault assembly. We then want to instantiate an object of the password class. And then we build our credential object that we want added and use the add method to add the credentials into the vault. And remove our cred from memory, as that's a good habit to get into. Now if we return everything again, we can see the new credentials that I've added to the password vault there. And in certain environments, if they are using a wireless pass or a Wi-Fi password instead of radius authentication for a Wi-Fi network, there is a popular command I've seen out there, which is pretty long, to return the Wi-Fi passwords. This has never been connected to Wi-Fi, and I don't want to show my Wi-Fi password, so you'll have to take my word for it on this one. But a simpler way to do this and view the same information is, rather than not using that whole command there, we can simply netsh LAN show profile name equals, of course, your Wi-Fi network name, and key is clear, and that value is what returns the password for you in clear text. You can tell if there are passwords that are existent inside the password vault by checking a couple different file locations. So like for each user, here's the user account I'm currently signed into where I save the Bitwarden profile, and I can see that I have a couple. These are my password vault values. There's also one at C program data. The Microsoft Vault, and we can use similar information here. Now, another thing I'm sure many people are familiar with is the PowerShell execution policy. And the execution policy can kind of help limit scripts executed on a device. The execution policies, they let you determine the conditions under which PowerShell loads configuration files and runs scripts. But the policy is not a security system that restricts user actions. So the recommended setting for this is to set up remote signed in an environment, which currently I have set up through group policy. And what that does is prevent my ability to modify the execution policy manually. So if I were to try to set execution policy to, say, unrestricted. I get an access denied error. And so if I'm unable to execute a script that I'm looking to execute, there are a couple ways I can bypass this policy. So the first way, or the way it works, is first we'll discover what our execution policy is really here. So get execution policy -list will show you the execution policies for all the different areas. There's the user, machine, process, current user, local machine. None of these, I won't be able to change any of these. So if I were to scope, say process is going to give me an error. Same thing with user policy and machine policy. Now, if we want to execute a script, we can execute it by sending the input locally, because with the remote signed execution policy, we have those permissions to execute commands locally as well as scripts locally inside the window. So to do that, we can take the contents of a file and use the invoke expression commandlet to interpret the contents of that file as strings. So it's as if you typed everything out yourself rather than tried executing a script. So one popular way to do this I've seen is using PowerShell -no exit -command. You can also use no logo, no profile. No exit just keeps the window open. And the command we are executing is invoke expression. We build an object to download the string of a file's contents on the web and execute it. So, and my virus protection caught that. And that's okay. So that's power view. That's a normal thing, or it's expected. Another way of doing the same thing here is echoing a command and then piping it to PowerShell, which executes, and we get hello BHack 2020. We can also get the contents of a file and then pipe that to PowerShell, doing the same thing. We can encode the command using base 64 and then execute it that way. We can also invoke the command on the local host using a script block, or we can use the -file parameter to execute a file. This opens a new PowerShell instance and executes it that way. So this was basically, I thought this was very clever. I found this on PowerShell Gallery from the user expand PWSH, and what he does is in PowerShell, it runs inside of a host, and that host uses the authorization manager to set the terms of the execution policy. So by setting the authorization manager to null, the execution policy settings don't get loaded, and it's a way of basically having an unrestricted execution policy. So I copied the function here, and when you execute disable execution policy, it sets that value to unrestricted. Basically, it's still going to return as if it's remote signed, but where are you? Execution policy, or we just want to get execution policy, and we'll list all. But the object is not in there to add the permissions. And so another security thing I wanted to point out is PowerShell version 2 is enabled by default on most machines. Now, what the issue with this is that later versions of PowerShell have protections set up for mostly blue teamers, I guess, such as script block logging, transcripts, and they also have some anti-malware scan interface integration. Now, there's a couple ways to use a PowerShell downgrade attack. There's a popular Python tool called Unicorn that uses PowerShell version 2 to inject payloads directly into a machine's memory. Now, by doing all this, you are not invincible, or you're not invisible. It's still detectable. You're just able to bypass some of the protections that exist. So to check if PowerShell version 2 is enabled on a machine, we can issue the command get Windows optional feature online, feature name, Microsoft Windows PowerShell v2. I believe this requires admin permissions. Yeah, so we'll, and here I can see it is enabled. If we were to disable or enable this, which we'll do just to show, I guess, the computer does not require a restart. These can all just be set and the changes apply right away. So I disabled it, and this we're going to turn it back on. All right, cool. So now using PowerShell version 2 is pretty simple. As far as executing a command, we are just using PowerShell -version 2, -no profile is optional, and then -command and whatever our command is. So executing this command shows us the assembly language that is loaded for PowerShell version 2, and this one here is going to show us for PowerShell version 5. And as we can see, there's different files that are loaded. So the latest one is System Management Automation version 4, where version 2 is System Management Automation version 1. Now, if we were to open Procmon here, let's do this. Actually, I think I can. All right. And then execute our command PowerShell version 2. We see this is our assembly language being loaded from here. And oops. All right, we'll do that one more time just to get it loaded. And I currently have a couple filters on there to show, but this is basically showing that you're not invisible, it's still detectable. So we're able to see that this assembly language was loaded. And I filtered for that, if interested, using the process name contains PowerShell and the path contains the assembly language path I had returned. Yeah, so the this can also be found in the event log. This is a common search item for it, where you're searching the Windows PowerShell logs for ID 400, where PowerShell something less than version 5 is used. So executing this, we can see, there's a few times that I've loaded the module on here. The main thing with the PowerShell downgrade attack, that's all fine and dandy, is it can be used with constrained language mode. So currently, our execution context, session state, language mode is full language, which means we have full access to the PowerShell host. This can be set to constrained language. Constrained language, right? Yeah. And what this does is prevent the loading of assembly objects into the PowerShell session and using commandlets like new object. So now if I were to use the token command that we used earlier, the system, security, identity, principal, Windows identity, get current, I'm not able to build that object. However, if I use PowerShell version 2 in constrained language mode, to command and issue that same command. What did I do wrong here? Oh, oops. Spelled version wrong. I can return that same object and get our, return our group information again if I want or whatever. Now, Another thing with PowerShell that is fairly simple to do if you have another tool to work with is setting up a man-in-the-middle attack. So depending on, usually you may just want to listen. If you can get a device in front of another device, so if you have your attack machine in front of another computer or device, using like a Hack5 tool or whatever, you can enable forwarding by doing the commits. This will require admin permissions. You can enable forwarding to that device by using set net IP interface forwarding enabled. That way any traffic that goes to the interface gets forwarded on to the device it's looking for. But to set up our man-in-the-middle attack here, what we will do is first we want to get the current MAC address of our device, which we can use using getNet adapter. And just to save this value for later, I want to take note of my MAC address. Now if I check my ARP table, or also getNet neighbor, I can view the MAC addresses of the devices around me. Now here I am seeing I don't have, so just to establish a quick connection, URI, pro.com, SRE, that doesn't matter. Alright, so that gives us the MAC address for the certificate authority server. So let's save that in a value here, CA-MAC equals that. Now I want to impersonate this device. So to do this, I'm going to set, well, just to bring that information back up, after I'm going to set my net adapter Ethernet 0 to maybe just MAC address, and we want to set it to the CA-MAC because that's what I want to impersonate. So that eliminates my internet, as the IP address is no longer associated with MAC address. So in order to compensate for that, I'm going to have to remove the old one, which is, we'll remove our net IP address of that. Now I currently don't have one. I just have a gateway. So I need to set the IP address of the certificate authority, which I should have resolved earlier, but I know it's 192.168.173 or 137.135. And now I have the same IP address and MAC address of the certificate authority. Now what I want to do is make sure it's all there. Okay, now if I open Wireshark, we're going to want to sign in here. And catch traffic. Now if I send a ping to CA, I can see it's sent to that IP address and I'm receiving those packets. Now if a device was behind me, that set net interface command should be forwarding the packets onto whatever device is behind me. And so if I wanted to impersonate a protocol such as something with responder, or with the tool responder, we could grab NTLM hashes or even SSDP. We can perform an evil spoof with that. So let me set our things back here. So again, just to show how this is done, as it can be a little pain here, we're going to remove our net IP address of 135. Then what we want to do is set it back. Okay, here we go, cool. To our original value. Mac. And then I need to give myself my IP address again if I'm going to get back on the internet. Config. And yeah. And one last thing I wanted to demonstrate is a way to basically read files. So what we can do here using this, to do this requires one a Pastebin account, and you can use their API key to create a Pastebin content. So to do this, I have set up a little template here. And actually, the key. And I believe content over. All right. So I'm going to try to not expose my API key here. But if we create the body of our Pastebin post, this is basically the format to communicate with the API. So API dev key is, of course, our authentication key that we use to make the post. API paste code, this is whatever we are pasting into a file. Now, this does not have to be a string. We can, we'll make this file contents. And what we'll do here is file contents equals get content of path C Windows system 30, or actually C users are Osborne script, I think, yeah. File contents, so I'm going to get the contents of this file, which if I execute is just simply write output hello BHack 2020. So what I'm going to do, that's going to be my paste code. This is going to be the name of the paste, which is test PHP. Because I have this in the API paste format for PHP, I'm just going to leave that. The expire date is an expiration date. So currently I have it set to 10 minutes so that it actually deletes the post after it exists on Pastebin for 10 minutes. This can be set to whatever you want, or you don't have to set it at all, but it's kind of a cool timer to have to just have something get deleted. So we're going to use this. I believe this is the window I used. And just in case, we're going to put it in this window as well. And now if we invoke our web request, so it was this one. Oh, looks like I'm going to have to get my API key in there. Give me just a moment. And we'll try to hide it, right? All right. So then if I invoke our web request again, all right. Now the content, HTTPS, Pastebin, this is the location of my post. So if I go into a browser here, I can view, this is the contents of that file. And in 10 minutes, this is going to be deleted. We can see it's called test.php. But this is a way of reading files without sending them back to your machine, which I thought was pretty cool. And okay, which this is really about all I had for you that I wanted to demonstrate today. I wanted to thank BHack again for giving me this opportunity to present this. And yeah, thank you.
Robert, thank you so much. Rafael send the greetings. He's not online right now, but he sent greetings, and I'm saying it on behalf of him. Man, thank you so much again for your time and for your knowledge. This is very, very worth. It's pretty good. So I need to learn more PowerShell. I'm gonna ask if the people have some questions. So let's see. Let's wait a little bit because of the delay. So if they have questions, I'm gonna ask you, and so we can answer them. If not, we can finish the talk. Just a second. I'm gonna switch to Portuguese right now. Pessoal, alguém tem alguma pergunta para o Robert? Vou esperar um pouquinho para ver se as perguntas chegam e fica à vontade aí para perguntar. Robert, we just wait a little bit because of the delay. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. No worries.
So, Robert, it looks like no questions so far. Man, again, thank you so much. It was really super worth. So that's it. Thank you so much again.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
If I get some questions after we finish the talk, I ask Rafael to forward to you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be available to answer anything.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Guys,